Star Trek Beyond, the third entry into J.J. Abrams' Star Trek reboot series. However, this film was not directed by J.J. Abrams. Instead, Justin Lin took over, and those of you might remember Justin Lin as basically the Fast and the Furious guy. He did Fast and the Furious 3 through 6 before James Wan took over for 7. He also did a film called Better Luck Tomorrow, which is a very well-known movie, and also worked on True Detective. So, Star Trek Beyond, third movie in the Star Trek reboot series. The cast from the previous two films do return. Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana is back. Everybody's back. Simon Pegg. And unfortunately, as many of you know by now, Anton Yelchin did return to portray Chekhov, but he actually passed away just a few weeks ago. And it was kind of weird seeing this film with him in it because he had just died. And it really sucks. Like, it really sucks that happened. It was a young guy. Young guy. He passed away. He's 27 years old, man. He's a young guy. But he's great in this movie. So the crew of the Starship Enterprise are once again reunited for this film. And the movie takes place about halfway through the 5-year mission. They tell us that this story is 2.5 years into the 5-year mission. If you remember Star Trek Into Darkness, the 5-year mission started at the end of that movie. So this is like about the halfway point. Without going into major spoilers, the plot of this film revolves around the Enterprise going on a rescue mission and getting attacked and ambushed by a villainous space pirate by the name of Krall. And Krall is after an ancient artifact that, when combined with another artifact, can create a very dangerous weapon that could end up being a genocidal weapon and hurt a lot of people. The Enterprise ends up on a mysterious planet and winds up getting split apart. So the entire theme of the film is that the crew is basically separated for a big chunk of the second arc, and then of course they have to come back together. And really the theme of this film is unity. That theme is brought up over and over and over again. First of all, about my review here, I really have had mixed feelings about the Star Trek reboot. I loved the first one. The second one I didn't think was as good. This movie, Star Trek Beyond, was a great, fun movie, and especially if you're a Star Trek fan, because there are so many homages and tributes to the original series. Even though I understood what J.J. Abrams brought to the Star Trek reboots for the first two, I actually felt Justin Lin was better. I honestly feel like Justin Lin is better suited to direct Star Trek because this film, everything, the way that he directed these actors, Chris Pine must have watched a lot of tapes of William Shatner because he really nailed that character. And there's several sections in this film that are just huge homages and love affairs to the original series. And the part that touched me the most, there was a couple parts where if you're a fan of Star Trek, you will be touched, is how they acknowledge the death of Leonard Nimoy. Of course, Leonard Nimoy died in real life. The guy who plays the original Spock Prime from the Prime universe, he is a big part of this universe's Spock's motivations and his kind of internal struggle to figure out what he wants to do with his life. They pretty much pay a huge tribute to Spock, to Leonard Nimoy in this film, and there's even a few scenes near the end that are very moving, all about the original cast and kind of how Spock relates to them. I loved it. I absolutely love that stuff. And I feel that the thing that made this film so strong, because right now Star Trek Beyond is my second favorite of these three Star Trek movies, from '09, the new trilogy, is that the film really felt like a longer 2-part episode of the TV series. The characters were all on point, and I felt that every character from Bones McCoy to Sulu, Chekhov, everybody got equal amount of screen time, which I really, really liked that. I really, really liked that a lot. And they kind of downplayed the superhuman Spock element. He was a badass, obviously, but not as much as he was in Into Darkness. This film really felt like it really encapsulated the spirit of the original series. So, and the thing about the original Star Trek is, when I was a kid, right, because I became a big Star Trek fan recently in my life. Like, when I was a kid, I wasn't really into Star Trek. Like, I watched a little bit of it. Next Generation was kind of more my thing, but I had to grow up to really get it, because I had thought, for a while, I was more of a Star Wars guy. I wanted more action and force and lightsabers, but Star Trek is different. you can't compare them. Star Trek is more of an adventure story and more of a pure sci-fi story with a lot of really deep humanistic elements. And that's what makes Star Trek so great. So you kind of have to grow up to understand it. Does that make sense? And that kind of goes to my analysis of the villain in this film. Krall is an interesting villain. So when you first meet this guy, you know right off the hop that he's a villain. Like, you know because of what he does. Now, I'm not going to go into spoilers. You know that he's a villain and that he's very, very dangerous. Well, it's not until the third act of the movie that you actually find out who he is and what his connection is to Starfleet. And I thought that it was really well done how they actually added some layers to this character. You know, one of the issues with Into Darkness that, you know, I've talked about this not on YouTube, but in the past I've talked with my friends, is that when they had Benedict Cumberbatch portraying Khan, the difference between that and Ricardo Montalban's Khan from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, is that Star Trek II was a follow-up to a Star Trek episode called Space Seed. With Into Darkness, we didn't have that backstory. They didn't really hammer home the backstory of Khan, and because of that, you really weren't too sure of what his motives were. Like, you knew, but his character wasn't really layered. It wasn't that much of a revenge story, whereas in The Wrath of Khan, it really was the Wrath of Khan. He was back for revenge, and he was back and more pissed off than ever before. It made sense. With Into Darkness, they didn't have enough time to tell that story, but with Krall here, they actually spent some time telling us later in the film why he's doing what he's doing, and it makes sense. Like, his beef actually does make sense, but his motivations go against the good guys. Of course, the good guys, the Enterprise crew, they're all about unity and peace, and he believes that you know, Krall's mentality is you have to suffer to be stronger, which makes sense. I mean, there is truth to that. That which does not kill me makes me stronger. And we find out what exactly he was suffering from and why he's so upset in the third act. And I thought it really, really helped out the character when you find out what's really going on. So when you're watching the movie, just letting you know, he's not just a one-dimensional villain. He's very scary, but you find out who he really is later on. I thought it was great. Really, really enjoyed that. Also, the special effects in this film I thought were way better than the previous two. There's been jokes made about how J.J. Abrams, when he does Star Trek, does the whole lens flares and everything. There were almost no lens flares here, and everything felt a little bit more real. The opening shot of the film with the Enterprise did look a little too CGI-ish. I'm not going to lie about that. But as the movie progressed, it definitely felt, you know, better. It definitely did. There is also a new character named Jayla in this film, who's one of the natives of the planet they end up on, and I really enjoyed that character because she has a great backstory, and it's a very simple backstory. The thing about this movie is that it didn't really tread new ground. Like, the story is very simple. Nothing in this film felt confusing, even though I will admit the final action sequence in the city I thought was a little confusing because I didn't really understand what was going on. It was way too fast-paced. That's one of my criticisms of this film, is that last part, I thought, like, there was too much going on. They didn't really explain what was going on with, like, the weapon and things like that. But back to the character of Jayla. No, I love this character. She has a great backstory. She has a great beef with Krall, and she's just a badass, and she is totally pulled out of Star Trek lore. Like, when you see this character, you can tell that this film is really paying a tribute to not just the 60s Star Trek, but also Star Trek Next Generation, in having, again, another strong woman character. There's been a lot of talk lately about female characters in film, and we are seeing a lot of really strong girls pop up. You know, Rey in Force Awakens, Black Widow's been pretty strong for a while. There's a lot of really strong women, and she fits right in there. Of course, she's not a human woman, but that's okay. She's still a girl. And also, this film paid its respects to hip-hop. I'm not going to spoil it, but this movie actually, and this sounds so weird, we're talking about a Star Trek film. We're talking about a Star Trek movie that was influenced by Gene Roddenberry, actually had hip-hop, rap music in the film, but it actually made sense. I loved it. I also thought the film was very funny. I thought the film, it wasn't funny to where the whole movie was a clown show, but there were enough laughs from the characters that we know and love, especially if you're into the original series, because these new actors, Carl Urban as Leonard McCoy, they get it. They get it, and they did it right. this was a thumbs up movie. If you're a fan of Star Trek, definitely go check out Star Trek Beyond. If you're in the mood for like a sci-fi movie this summer, don't watch Independence Day Resurgence. I would probably stick with this one. This was a really, really great film. Also, if you have not seen the Star Trek reboots, definitely go back and watch them. And even if you 1, 2, and then this one, and even if you are a fan of the original series, you will have a lot to love here. Even if you don't like the Abrams ones, this movie did feel more like a Star Trek movie and was much more human. So go check it out. I want to know your thoughts down below, of course. And if you're going to leave thoughts down below about the film with spoilers, make sure you give a spoiler warning as a courtesy to the rest of the commenters. Thank you again for watching my review here, and stay tuned to Geekdom 101 because I'm going to go see a lot of movies in the next few days. Killing Joke on Monday, I'm planning to go see that. So tons of movie reviews, tons of Dragon Ball stuff, Star Wars stuff. We're going to have a good time, a good nerdy time on Geekdom 101. Hope y'all have a great, great day. Talk to y'all later.